back. This is episode 2. This week we're going to be talking about reducing technology and expanding attention. I know you're going to think that this isn't really about homeschool yet, and you're right. This is actually true for all children everywhere, not just homeschooled children. What we're trying to do is we're trying to talk about different habits that will make homeschool more successful when you actually get started with it. This one is very important for all learning in the future, that children become less dependent on technology and able to push their attention span further, because when they tackle a homeschool subject that's difficult, you want them to have practice in not giving up just because something got hard. You want them to be able to have the attention span that they need to tackle difficult subjects for longer, whether it's listening to you read aloud a difficult chapter, whether it's doing long division and getting all those steps in their brain in the right order. It could be a science experiment that's going to take many days to fulfill, and they need to have the patience and the perseverance to keep going with it. So what you're doing when they're little, as a preschooler or a toddler, is you're trying to expand their attention span now so that they are more used to that habit in the future. I have been in the public school, and what I noticed with different classrooms is that teachers have to plan their lessons for the kids with the shortest amount of attention in the room. And what that means is that in a public school setting, the children can get into a very exciting activity, but the teacher needs to end it before a very distracted child is going to be bored. And so your child, who may not be the most distracted one, might want to continue that activity longer, maybe 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes, but the teacher necessarily has to cut off whatever's happening in the classroom to keep things moving so that the distracted children or the bored children don't start causing chaos. What we're trying to accomplish actually requires a longer attention span, and we should be encouraging longer attention spans. If your child is enjoying an activity that they're participating in, I would say don't interrupt them unless you have to, unless it's supper time or you need to go somewhere as a family, or they have other things that need to be accomplished that day. But for the most part, if your child is in an activity that they enjoy, try to let them enjoy it. That's helping them discover who they are as a person. So let's start off with limits on screen time. When I was growing up, my mom was very, very, very careful to only let us watch 3 hours of television every week. I look back on that now and I'm just amazed. We had a wonderful childhood. I don't complain about it at all, but we really had to budget our 3 hours. If we watched Little House on the Prairie, that was 3 days after school. If we wanted to watch cartoons on Saturday morning, we didn't watch any TV after school so that we could watch Saturday morning cartoons. We really thought about it. We really tried to figure out when we were going to spend our time watching TV. Now, I can scroll Facebook for way too many hours in just a day. So I see the wisdom of what my mother was teaching me, and I'm so thankful I didn't have to deal with smartphones when I was raising my family. This next generation is going to really have to struggle with these issues, and I don't really have a lot of guidance. This is something we've been talking a lot about with our teenagers in our home, because screens tend to consume a lot of us. And what I'm noticing is that I need to really help them have the tools to think this through, the wisdom and the discernment to think this through, because they're going to be facing things in the next 40 years that we can't even imagine or think of yet. They probably haven't been invented. So we need to give them wisdom and discernment to think about it. What's helped in our family is to be able to distinguish between when technology is being used as a tool or when technology is being used as a distraction. You would not be able to watch my YouTube videos if we didn't use technology as a tool. So in that case, this is a good way for me to get my message out and talk to people about what homeschooling has meant to our family, but I'm using technology as a tool to do it. I ordered pizza the other night using my app for Casey's on my smartphone. That was using technology as a tool. I've paid bills using my computer. That's technology as a tool. I've taught my kids how to write papers using a word processor on their computer. That's technology as a tool. But technology as a distraction is when we're just sitting down and asking for amusement or entertainment. And there's all sorts of it. It's an endless supply out there. So that's where we have to use discernment and think about, what could our time be used for in other ways? Do I need to be entertained constantly? Do I need to be amused all the time? And what am I inviting into my mind through technology that really isn't good for me? These are the kinds of things that we need to teach our kids to wrestle with and make godly decisions about. And I don't envy you raising kids in this generation where smartphones are everywhere. That's going to be something that you face that I didn't have to face. We do need to teach our kids to find other ways to occupy their time, because that is healthy. We already know, just from the last 10, 15 years of research, that too much time in technology is harming our kids. So as parents, we need to figure out ways that we can keep them excited about other aspects of life, and what can we substitute and participate with. so that they're not always constantly grabbing for the latest screen or the latest device or whatever they think that they need. And with that, as a parent, you should be guiding your children to develop longer attention spans. And we kind of talked about that at the beginning a little bit. What I wanted to share with you is something that I came up with in the year 2000. So we're going quite a ways back. I gave a talk about playing with your preschool or entertaining your preschool. And I came up with a bunch of I just brainstormed different ways that you can keep your kids busy. And so I'm going to put this out on my blog. Notice that it is the year 2000, so several of the resources listed here will be out of date. But the one that I highly recommend, if you can still get a hold of it, is called Before 5 in a Row. And this has a list of several books that are good for preschoolers and ways to teach things with it that you could do as a preschool family, a family with preschoolers. But what I really like about it is the back half of the book gives you all sorts of ideas of how to play with a preschooler. And remember that play is work for a preschooler. This is where they're learning about their world. On the other side, I made a list of all sorts of different things that you could do. And there's a category of the basics, which everybody knows about Play-Doh and sidewalk chalk. There's celebrating holidays and traditions. There's being outdoors. And we'll talk about that in one of our late episodes later in the spring. Chores and life skills. Learning readiness would be what we typically think of as far as a preschool curriculum. That's some ideas, plus arts and crafts. If you are a Bible-believing family, you're going to want to spend time teaching your kids Bible basics and different ways that you can enjoy learning about the Bible and Jesus with your kids. Puzzles and games, special outings, and notice that these all have to do with being in Northwest Arkansas, where I was living at the time. And then extended activities, things that might take a long time or that you could do over several months. For example, like planting a garden together or trying to develop an ant colony, something like that. There will also be a blank form if you want to brainstorm your own ideas for that. And then also my friend Laura Rogers down in Arkansas, she also came up with a list on a day that she gave a talk, and it's 55 ways to play with your kids. And again, the idea is I don't want you to have to feel like you need to entertain your kids. Your kids have to come to a point where they can entertain themselves. Your job is not to amuse them constantly. Your job is to give them the tools that they need to be able to entertain themselves. But sometimes kids, they run out of ideas. So you as a parent can help extend it. Like for example, when my son Nathan was little, we had these little tiny plastic animals. And he didn't really know what to do with them. He would get them out every once in a while. We'd play with them and stuff. But one day I got the idea to use an old blank piece of cardboard and to make a zoo. So we just laid down this old blank piece of cardboard on the ground, and I gave him some crayons. And he and I together spent at least an hour coloring on the cardboard and making a little enclosure. We just drew it on there for each of the different kinds of plastic animals that we had. And it was a fun activity. It was a fun thing to do with him, and I had the time to do it that day. It was really something I look back on, and we had a good time. And that was something then that we could get out the next week or the next week and play zoo again. But I taught him how to take on a longer project than he had thought of before. And I modeled that for him. And then he was able to come up with some ideas of his own. When Nathan was a teenager, he decided to dig a giant hole. And I think it's probably still there on our farm. It's about, I'd say, 8 feet deep. Maybe it was at the time. It's fallen in. And maybe 6 foot square. And it was something that I had never really thought of. Why would you dig a hole? That doesn't make any sense. But it was something that he had an attention span to do and to accomplish, and he went ahead and did it. 2 things. I put in 2 quotes from here on the handout that you can download. The very first time that I ever encountered the word flow as an idea from educational psychology was when I read this book, Talented Teenagers, The Roots of Success and Failure, for one of my classes that I took. And I'm not sure how to pronounce the author's name. Csikszentmihalyi, I'm going to guess. I don't know. I put it on the paper so you can Google it if you want to get some more information. But they had a chapter in here about the concept of flow. And I just wanted to bring it to your attention because I want you to know that people are talking about this in educational circles. They call this flow is when you are so involved in a task at hand that you actually lose sense of time. You just want to keep persisting in what you're working on. Everybody in the world has had some time when they have been so absorbed in a project that they enjoyed so much that they just kind of forgot about everything else. Now, that does not happen very often once you become a mother. Sad to say, once you become a mother, you end up having to pay attention to a lot of other things. And so I wouldn't say necessarily that you get to enjoy this very often, but your kids, you're trying to get them to enjoy what they're doing so that they experience this thing called flow. Talented teenagers, they discovered, are the ones who experience flow when they were doing academics, obviously. and wanted to continue doing that. And they had a supportive environment, parents or caregivers or teachers who encouraged them to get into that mindset and just really dig in and pay attention to it. The other one I wanted to bring you to your attention is a homeschool name, Charlotte Mason. She was actually an educator in Britain over 100 years ago, but she wrote a bunch of books that have now been adopted by the homeschool communities, and her philosophy is embraced by many. So I put in one of her quotes too. It says, "It is impossible to overstate the importance of this habit of attention. It is, to quote words of weight, within the reach of everyone and should be made the primary object of all mental discipline. For whatever the natural gifts of the child, it is only so far as the habit of attention is cultivated in him that he's able to make use of them." What this means is you could have a child who's super genius at playing the piano, but if he can't sit still long enough to play the piano, you're never going to find out he was a genius. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get your children to be able to give you attention or give some activity their attention long enough to develop competence in it, and beyond that, excellence. This is not just a concept from these people, these researchers, and from Charlotte Mason. This is a habit. This habit of paying attention is also mentioned in the Bible. In the Proverbs, we see many times the words, "Pay attention, my son, to my teaching." And then the one that I wrote down on a Post-it note and put in my closet, so I see it every morning, is from Colossians 4:17. And this version is just a little different than this one. I'll read it in this version first. This is the NIV. "Tell Archippus, see to it that you complete the work you have received in the Lord." But the version where I copied it out of, which is probably the Living Bible, is, "Pay attention to the ministry you have received in the Lord so that you can accomplish it." And that's the idea that if you're not paying attention to something, you're not going to make progress in it. And I think it's interesting that it's the words "pay attention." There is a cost. Just like with limited resources in economics, there's something called opportunity cost, where if you have $5 and you decide to spend your $5 on a dozen eggs, you won't be able to buy a gallon of gas, because you had to use it for one or the other. It's opportunity cost. It's the same thing with your attention. You only have a limited number of hours each day, and your attention span's even shorter than that. What you decide to give your limited resources to is going to show what's important to you. So your children, for sure, are important to you, and you should pay attention to how you're valuing them and their time. And you should also help them to make the decisions that they need at their young ages, to make decisions that value things that are important in God's eyes, important in your family's eyes, things that are going to be of eternal value and help them in their future to be better prepared for our world. So the goal for today is to spend the next few months, this is not going to be an overnight project, spend the next few months helping your kids back off of technology and replace those things with things that will spur their imaginations. And when you see them involved in a project or an activity that's really absorbing them and absorbing their interest, try to encourage that. Try to lengthen that, just even by 3 or 4 minutes a week, where they are able to finally sit still or listen or pay attention or play on a project for a good half hour. That's what you're hoping for when you start homeschool, is that your child is able to do something that they enjoy for at least 30 minutes. So that's your challenge for today. Remember that by week 5, we're going to be working on shepherding a child's heart. So try to find yourself a copy of that. There is a link in the video comment section. If you need a book from Amazon, I'm an affiliate, and I do earn a few pennies if you order through that link. So thank you for joining me. I'll see you again next week.